Hi, my name is Chad Coe with LA Photo Party, and this is In the Booth, a new interview series for the photo booth industry. You know, I realized that I knew all these people that are at the highest level of the game in the events industry, and if only boothers, new and old, could eavesdrop and learn from them, it could be so helpful. This series will have the top event planners, business owners, and icons in the industry, but it'll probably also have people that you've never even heard of, but are working in the most innovative and exciting ways. Without further ado, this is In the Booth. Today's guest, Fernando. Dude, Fernando. Say your last name.
Coelho.
I've known him a long time, but I've never really said his last name. Oh my gosh, this is so great. Okay, you need no introduction, but we're going to give you one. One of the best organic networkers I've ever seen. He's a master of relationships and everybody loves him. Also, I'm happy to call him my friend. Fernando has been in the industry over a decade. He is a part of LA Photo Party. He runs our New York sales branch, client relations, manage accounts for some of the largest corporate brands and high-profile event planners. He was also the president of Aliyah in New York, the Metro chapter. His motto is to turn competitors into partners and clients into friends. So first off, we're going to be going into networking, and I want you to share just a little bit about your journey in the events industry.
Sure. Well, my industry experience came kind of in reverse. I had no interest in it. I was actually in law enforcement. I was a corrections officer, and I was in a really bad accident. Not work related, but it ended up leaving me sort of couch ridden for a few years. And a buddy of mine had been trying to get this photo business off the ground, and I was just kind of helping him remotely from the couch, doing some kind of outreach on the computer. And as soon as I got my legs back essentially and was able to walk around, I was just all over the industry, attending different networking events and just working in industry that I really had no experience in, but just had a lot of genuine fun at. And that's pretty much how it all got started.
Yeah. And tell me the importance of being an effective networker. Why is that so crucial to business and just like life in general?
Yeah. I mean, you have to communicate with people. You have to talk to people. You have to be seen in order to accomplish anything. So work is just another place to practice this. I mean, obviously, you know, communication is going to take you between your family and your friends and your work and strangers. So networking is just another place where you sharpen your skills in genuine interaction. Obviously, there's a little bit more direction at a networking event, but overall, you're really just trying to find ways to connect genuinely with people. And here's why it's important.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're social creatures, and there is a component that requires connection. Isolation, and we learned this, you know, during the COVID days, isolation has a dramatic impact on your mood, on your well-being, on your health. So it is important that we are finding opportunities to get in front of people and interact with people in the flesh.
And for our listeners who are getting a kind of a sense of your story and all this is, you know, when I've been around Fernando, his clients are his friends. They like him, they have his back. And to get to that place where your clients are your friends, how are you able to do it in such a way? It feels organic and authentic. And if I'm just starting out in my photo booth business, how do I lean into that if it's scary for me?
Well, I mean, first of all, being scared doesn't mean you don't do things, right? That's the first thing. And that word scared, I like to kind of make one subtle adjustment and make it sacred, right? Just switch two letters. So that is actually a motivator. Okay, I'm scared because this is important to my business, is important to my life. But that doesn't mean stop, right? It means actually pay more attention. Now, in order to be an effective communicator, we have to understand that, you know, people do go to work, right, to have some sort of financial necessity met, but people are also emotional creatures and they want to have experiences that feed another part of their body. And so an effective way to communicate is to actually be genuinely interested in some part of this person outside of their role at work, because we are more than just our title, we are more than just our job. So finding a way to genuinely connect on a personal level allows the relationship to grow a lot faster.
Yeah, and it feels like we can tell when somebody has an agenda with us, and that doesn't feel good, right? Because I think when I was a young man, in different industries trying to connect with people, I thought that like, oh, this person's important. I got to go talk to that person and connect with that important person and get something out of it. Whereas, as you get older, it becomes a bit more, you talk about anything but the business, but then the business comes along for the ride. Do you feel like that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I have like countless interactions or examples on where the business conversation didn't start until deep into personal inquiry. It's almost as if like, oh wait, what do you do again? After they've listened to some sort of story that had nothing to do with work. And I think that is the secret, because most of these events or most of this networking, at least organized networking, is happening after a long day of work. And so people are kind of looking for some reprieve, and to just jump right into pitch and just to jump right into, another work function, it just makes it a lot more freeing to engage in something that isn't directly related to you needing something from them.
Yeah, it's like the first rule: be a person first, right? You have a family, you have things that hobbies outside, so do they, right? In building long-term relationships, so we're talking somewhat of meeting somebody and having a connection that doesn't feel agenda-based or pushy. But then once you kind of click maybe at an event or a trade show or meeting somebody, how do you foster that long-term relationship?
Well, I mean, it's just like any other relationship in your life. It needs contact. It needs touch points. You can't enter a relationship with your girlfriend or your boyfriend and then never talk to them. So there needs to be actual interaction, and this interaction needs to be thought out. It shouldn't be batched. It should be incredibly personal or incredibly corporate. Meaning, if you're reaching out, maybe have a new product or service to offer. Maybe reach out to invite them to an industry event, or to talk about some relative partnership or trend or whatever. Or it is personal. It's their birthday, or they got a promotion, or that something is going on relative to their life, and that's a reason to interact. But I think one of the things that kind of tied into your early days was it was more of like a numbers game. And so we were trying to move through pieces rather quickly. And like you said, if something is coming off, not authentic or too needy or speedy, then you're going to kind of repel that client.
When somebody reaches out and every time they reach out, they're asking for something that just doesn't feel good, because it's not a give and take relationship. But when you get an email that's just like, hey, you told me about this thing with your family. Did that work out with your kid? Was it a good party? Or, you remember these touchstones, that relationship starts to build organically, versus like, hey, is that invoice in? Or what's up for your next season for these events, right?
Exactly. And knowing personal information allows more access. Knowing someone's, relative life and structure. Sometimes people open up about their current situations or their struggles, being able to offer, a video or a tutorial of something, or even just like a really nice post or meme or something that you see that might bring a smile or some thoughtfulness along the way goes a long way.
Yeah, and it's a two-way street, because that that open vulnerability from both sides, is where relationships grow, right? And then just because it's a business relationship doesn't mean it has to be cold. Some of those people, like you said, and I've seen with you, is they become really good friends. And when you're working with a friend, we're all going to have times where there's an issue in an event or something didn't go as planned, but then you have your back of your friend, or they have a little bit more patience with you because of that relationship. Fernando, talking about building a professional network, I know that you're a huge proponent of ALIA. Can you talk a little bit about how you started with that group and other groups and why those are important?
So it's called ILEA, International Live Events Association. And like I said, when I got started, I didn't know anybody. I had zero experience. So I just started going to different networking events. ILEA just happened to be the one that really stuck. And by that, I just mean I went all in. I didn't just join the organization, I became a part of the organization. I got on a board, I got on a committee, I got super involved because I saw how committed like each individual was to really hand holding you and being like, what do you do again? I know who you should meet. And then literally walk you around the room and introduce you to, important people or even just kind of good combinations of people. And so being in that organization and then getting deeper involved allows you to not really focus on yourself, but focus on the roles of the organization. And then the networking happens automatically.
Right.
And you're also in the role, you're not directly asking for anything in specific. Yet everyone is getting to know you and your brand in the process. And without trying to pitch anybody, just by being, a quality human being and wanting people to feel good in your space, they find ways to get you at their event or to interact with you more regularly because they enjoy your company for the most part.
Yeah, and it feels as a natural way of building trust with somebody or an organization, because the more you spend time with someone, if you've ever spent, if I'm with somebody at a party for a couple hours versus multiple hours over, weeks and months and years, it just starts to, you're like, oh, that Fernando, he's a great guy, because I think the other thing too is that people ask themselves maybe when they're starting out is one, okay, I don't like it. Networking's like icky. I don't, because it feels like I have to, go at it with some agenda, right? Versus, being just a person. And then this other thing of like, where do I even go? Right. But this is a great example. There's groups in cities. It doesn't have to be, New York, like a metropolis like that. There are these groups in smaller markets, and finding these hubs are places where things happen. Right. So talk to me a little bit about, utilizing other events and conferences. Like, what would be the difference, from a group like this versus how you would operate in a trade show? Or is it the same process and and being a person first?
Well, yeah, I think the organization, you think about this like a team, right? When you join a team, you have like the support and backing of multiple individuals. So like the energy levels automatically lift. You're not like walking around as a solo individual trying to make contact. You're a part of a group. So you already have mass, you already have gravity. And that allows you to move through those spaces and those networking events a lot easier because you genuinely made those happen. Whether it's on the event committee or the membership committee or the education or programs or even just helping pick the venue, you were a part of that. And that allows people that confidence. Like if you enter the room as just an individual attending, you probably have a lot more reservation than joining as someone who's already a part of the group. Now, the trade show, your team is your corporation. So you should have the same level of backing and support so that you can exude that I don't need anything. And that's the key at the networking event.
I love that. Yeah.
I don't need anything. If you go to the networking event needing, then
Yeah.
you're already desperate. There's already like this repelling kind of energy. But if you're there as I'm bringing something, people need me. That's why I'm showing up, so that I can be of service, that I can offer things to people. That kind of energy is what you're doing at a trade show. And it's the same kind of energy that you bring to the networking event. They need your services. They need your expertise. They want you to connect them to other people. And when you do that, the second you facilitate any one of those things, you are now a constant resource for this person.
That made me think about how important listening is as well, because I think, with sales or any type of business connection is, so often we aren't listening to the customer or the other company that we can partner with. We're not hearing what they're saying. We're pushing some agenda. We're pushing something that we need, where sometimes it might just be, that they need to be invited to something, or introduced to somebody else in the team that can help them. And it's not about selling an event or a piece of hardware or something. It's just like, well, let me help you. And we don't need anything out of this. You don't have to pay for this service. They'll just answer some questions for you,
Exactly. I think the real connection won't happen unless you've actually listened. If nothing landed, then the connection never fused. And usually the not listening is really just like an anxiety, like, oh, will the next thing I say make sense? Or will the next thing I say be important? Will it match up? And all of that is a signal. All of that is blocking. And if people actually give themselves a break and go, oh, now it's time for me to just listen. That's actually beauty. That's like a mini vacation in that interaction. And I actually read this really important sort of stat that the Japanese culture is customary. It is customary to allow roughly 16 seconds between discussion. Do you imagine sitting for 16 seconds without talking? Someone would be like, what the heck did just happen? And is he offended? What happened, right? And the American culture is less than half of that. So I think that if we do a lot more listening, and this is not an easy tactic, believe it or not, in our ultra distractive world we live in. And one of the things that I really am a huge proponent of is breath work. Mm-hmm. And so I'm doing a ton of that while I'm listening. And I'm also doing a ton of posture awareness, right? Because when you walk up to someone, and this is very subtle, but this versus this is a huge difference. Because here's what happens, right? As you start to round forward, your heart pushes back in space. And now imagine that is your confidence, right? That is your gift, that is your strength, that is your support, your care, and you're getting worried, and which is why it's moving back, right? Which is why you're now thinking more, because you've literally pushed your head forward. So if you can actually, right before you enter the event, just kind of watch what the body is doing. And this is like the best sort of technique to remember this stuff. Simple. You. Okay, 3 pieces, Y, O, U. The first one is the Y, which is your body. It's everything physical. How are you standing? How are you shuffling around? Is the body open? Is your heart present? So noticing your posture, that's number 1. Once you have that down and you're more receptive, this part of your body is more open, right? Then you move over to the U. So we start outside in. What is happening upstairs? All this worry, all this fear, all this stuff. Just acknowledge it, that it's happening. And remember, it's happening because this is important. It's part of your job. It's part of this thing. So that's a good thing. You're taking awareness of what's happening upstairs. And then at the very center, you need air. You need oxygen. At your center, there's this energy that needs fuel. And so when you have this physical hardware down, software down, and you're breathing, now the game starts. Now you're ready to play. You got your avatar ready to go. And so the next piece of the networking part is to look for somebody. Like, don't just aimlessly walk around. Inspect the room with this new posture, with this new level of awareness, and with constant energy pumping through the body. You're going to look for somebody who you like, who you genuinely are connecting with without even approaching them. Maybe you like their style. Maybe you like something they're wearing. Maybe you just see them alone and maybe they can use some interaction. And now you move over them with an open chest, right? All the vital organs are exposed. You're not scared. You're not worried. You're not scared. You're here to bring your gifts and watch what happens. And don't feel like you have to talk to everybody and rush around. You make solid contact with one person. You let that naturally happen. If it happens to be the same person all night, so be it. But you genuinely connect that way. And it's worked for me.
I love it. Should I give 16 seconds? 1, 2, 3. No. This is so amazing because nobody else is going to talk about networking at a metaphysical level. And I should also mention that when Fernando's not closing these amazing events for our team, he's teaching yoga and he's doing breath work with people and he's talking about these types of things. There isn't much of a difference between the two. And what I'm hearing from you is about being open, about being present with people and holding space for them and holding space for, but you have to hold space for yourself first, right? And that's how it happens. And if you think about being at a party, because what I was hearing from you is, the analogy I would say is you're at a party and all of a sudden, you're just having an instinct and you're following that instinct and you're talking to somebody, you're making a joke, or you're like, oh, I got to go to the kitchen. And then just because you're like, I need a new drink in the kitchen, that something happens there, but you're just trusting and you're listening to what's coming up in you, right? And it has to be the same thing with sales. Otherwise it becomes agenda-based and it becomes pushing something and you're not listening, and people can tell whether they're consciously being like, he's not listening, or it just doesn't feel right. They're moving on.
This is a metaphysical thing, right? The moment you are most attractive, now think about this, attractive. So the most sort of pull, you only have that when your organs are entertained. Believe it or not, that's the word that's used. Entertained means that the level of energy being consumed by the body is equally distributed. I'm not heavily heady. In fact, the body can tell when there's a lot of activity up here because the brain is such a large consuming part of the body. So when you're very stuck in thought, you're actually sending a different signal. When you are full of awareness and breath, you are sending another signal. It's almost like the tide. You're actually drawing people in with your energy, with your presence, with your awareness of your body and breath, because people want that. And what we don't naturally realize is that we want people to feel how we feel. So if you show up to the networking event feeling a little tired, feeling a little slow, feeling a little scared or worried, that is exactly what you're projecting. And that's exactly what you're going to get back.
I don't want to be here.
Exactly. Yeah. You'll even find other people to match and commiserate with and find no networking at all. You will do absolutely no networking. You'll stay and you'll probably see these people again at the next event and you'll do the same exact thing. And this is why this you component, like starting with you, how am I standing? What am I thinking about? Am I getting air? Mm-hmm. You cover those three components. I usually do about a 30-second check-in with all three. The physical one is opening. It's always simple. We do so much rounding, texting, typing, that I make sure I open the collarbones, open the necks, right? So I'll just really do some shoulder pumps, very simple stuff. And I'll carve up and down just to really, and you'll feel how much, you might even hear some pops, some cracks, even like some adhesions that are kind of tearing. I open that up and then I just notice what I'm thinking about. Typically, as you change your body, you'll already start to change the way you feel, right? Because the shape means something. If I'm standing like this, you're probably going to say, he's worried, he's concerned, he's scared.
Yeah.
If I'm standing like this, oh, that guy feels ready. That guy looks
smile versus scowl.
Right. So the shape of you tells a story even before you started talking. So getting aware of that, getting aware of the breath, and then genuinely looking for somebody that you're going to jive with. And then it becomes an interesting game because you'll know if your compass is dialed in. Like if you approach someone and maybe the interaction isn't so great, you're like, okay, let me dial in a little better. Let me spend a little bit more time on myself before I engage.
Fernando, you're coming up with these, these great tips in order to feel good and to be open and to connect. Can you tell a story of a successful networking partnership that you met this way that has continued through the years and has, borne fruit? I believe that's how you say it, and bared fruit. Okay, somebody check that for me.
Yeah, I mean, I got stories for days, but I'll say that my very first successful networking interaction happened it was an ILEA event, and it was at a Dave & Buster's. And the event was all gamification and how you can host events here and, walk people through different stations. But as part of the evening's entertainment, they gave everyone a little laser tag action, and they were keeping score of everybody at the event. There were maybe 40, 50 people at this event. You wear your little thing. Now, I was a law enforcement officer. I happened to win the firearms award. So I am very used to shooting people. And so at this event, I was just ducking behind barriers, just clipping everybody off. And when it came down to calculate the scores, I was just head and shoulders above everybody. And I didn't say anything about work. Everybody was just genuinely interested in why I was so good at this game. And then they learned about my background. They were so intrigued about my story and how I ended up in the event industry. And from that point on, I was the guy that was their photo guy now. They just, anytime they needed something photo related, they were going to go to this guy who had this really interesting story, who didn't pitch them anything, but was just genuinely fun and nice. And that was it.
What I'm hearing there is the backstory, right? It's just it's like watching a movie. It's like when there's no backstory, when the story isn't interesting, I don't care about the characters and I check out of the movie, right? It's the same thing in life and personal relationships and business relationships. It's what's the backstory? Why do I care about you? But then you're just oh, you have a dog too? Let's talk about our dogs. Oh, you do this thing? Oh, I have no idea about that. What's that like? Nobody wants to talk about the thing they do all the time. They want to talk about the thing that they don't know about, or the thing that they, is unique, right? And that was you being unique and not pushing anything. What about, being at LA Photo Party, a client? Is there a client of yours, a specific one that you feel you built this relationship over time, and maybe they built that with you, it's a reciprocal. Is there somebody that you can point to?
Yeah, this was actually another really great story that was not a direct networking event. I was actually in the airport. I was at Miami International waiting to catch a flight back to Newark. I was doing some underwater photo booth pitching stuff out in Miami. And I noticed someone sitting at the same terminal as me, really pissed off. You could tell something bad happened, delayed flight or canceled flight or something. But she gave me the East Coast, I'm working, I can't believe I'm getting slowed down kind of vibe. And I just sat down next to her and be like, hey, I see you're flying to Newark too. I was like, did your flight get delayed or canceled or something? And just asked her a genuine question and let her rip into why she was pissed off. And then I asked her, well, what do you do for work? And she said, "Oh, I am in the marketing department for NBC Universal." I was like, "Oh, no way. I do a ton of marketing stuff. I work for a marketing agency. We're photo based." And I was like, "I'd love to, hit you up when we're back in Newark." She's like, "Sure." She gave me her card. For a year, 1 year, I would email her maybe once a quarter, just touching base on just trying to get a meeting together. She finally agreed to a lunch and learn. I pitched her on, let me bring lunch to the office
Right.
and I'll show you all the latest and greatest in photo booth technology. So I went to NBC. There was about, I don't know, 7 or 8 different contacts between NBC and some other networks, Bravo, I remember. And not only did the pitch go incredibly well, but they booked 3 activations in Cannes Film Festival that was happening just a month down the road, because we told them we were also going to be in Cannes doing some work for Viacom. And that this instantly turned into a relationship that exists today. It's nearly a decade with NBC, and all from just deciding to sit next to someone at the gate
And engage.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you didn't know that something was going to come up, but then this little gift happened. And then the other thing that I want people to hear, if anyone's listening, you are, is that you followed up for a year. That it's not just, hey, you want to get together, and they're like, yeah, and then it's just business. It almost never is. Some of the biggest clients that I've landed for LA Photo Party took years, and multiple contacts were fired, left, different things happened, got switched around. And some of those things take a long time. It's not easy, but it's persistent, and it's, staying focused and connecting to the part of the conversation that was probably real, which is why, she answered your lunch and learn versus somebody else who's probably emailing her, because I guarantee 10 other people are emailing for some similar reason, right? But why do you say yes to someone?
Well, here's the thing, right? It is easy. Now, all it takes is a couple of emails. So we're talking 5 or 6 emails in that year, right? But evenly spaced with relative information. Hey, I'd like to show you this, or we have this, or hey, when's a good time to meet with staff? And then, hey, when can I bring lunch? But these little contacts, if I'm going into it like, when is she gonna book? Oh my God, not again. Oh, another. Then it is hard. And you made it harder by the energy you're putting behind it. And when it is something that they need me, it's only a matter of time until they do, until they call. I'm not dwelling on it. I'm not desperate for it, but I am going to touch it every once in a while until it's obvious they don't want me to anymore.
Right.
My thing is not, it's not combative. It's not pushy. It is very sparse, and it is poignant. But eventually, the thing that is gonna lock the relationship in is that they see persistence, that they actually see, oh, there's a lot of follow through. That's probably going to equate on site. That's probably going to equate in interaction, in response time, and all these things. So they know that you're really there and you're really attentive.
And I think that it's about the long game and not the short game, right? Like the short game is I gotta find the perfect contact in this party, in this networking event. I gotta somehow, maybe I got that contact. Now I gotta book right away. These things take, time. I mean, think about dating somebody, what I mean? Very, very rarely are you getting married day 2, right? You're dating, there's dinner, there's getting to know each other. You get to know other people, and then you get married. If you follow the analogy, that's how it works. Fernando, when it comes to staying relevant with contacts and, hot trends and features that matter, how do you utilize that in your relationship building?
The thing that you want to in any networking situation is to present yourself as not needing anything again, right? But having a ton of offering, but also knowledge of the industry. So reaching out with newer trends or, just a new tech that's coming in positions you as an expert, and it puts you in a high relative standard as far as knowing where to go when something's needed. Obviously, any new trend like AI in the photo booth industry is something that radically changes the photo booth. People are now not sure what they're going to look like. Something like that is incredibly useful with outreach, because again, you're not asking them for anything. You're showing them what they can purchase, what is now accessible.
Yeah, because how often have you gotten this email from a client saying, "What's new?" Right? If you can offer them, I love offerings. I love that. If you can offer them something, as they're thinking, as they're needing it, or right before they need it, and then they're like, actually, And I remember Brian, who used to be the CEO of our company. His thing is he would do, these lunch and learns where you'd go to a client and you'd show them new things, and more often than not, they would book you. Not for the thing you just showed, but just because they saw you and they're like, oh, actually, I just thought about this other thing we need. And then you'd get a job out of it, but not necessarily what you were pushing, right? Or what you were showing off at that time. It's just about an authentic connection.
Exactly. The huge takeaway in that, David Buster's example, I'm using a gun here, but
yeah.
I was having a ton of fun.
Yeah.
I was beaming. I was like really genuinely having fun. And remember, people feel the way you feel. So that interaction is happening. So if you're feeling really good, you actually have gravity. People want to get near you because the feeling is roughly 8 to 10 feet around your body. It literally, quite literally leaves your body. So people will want to get closer to you if you're already feeling really good. And you'll notice that if you're not feeling good, you're going to have a lot less attraction. And so getting that couple of seconds to hit the YOU just allows you better engagement, better interaction, and just more fruit.
Yeah. And I feel in this conversation, I was thinking of it as something that, we're going to have this conversation and, the listeners are eavesdropping and we'll learn something. And I forget that I was going to learn something, that I could learn something, because then I'm just like, oh, I need to breathe, because we forget. Right. And that's something that is a focus for me, but I forget to breathe. I forget to be open. I forget to have an opinion about the moment and be like, oh, this could be cool. This could be fun versus like, oh, this might be something this might be long, or I don't know if I want to see this, or I want to, maybe this isn't, whatever it is, like that attitude shift, people pick up on that, So, to kind of recap, first we talked about, whether you're a newcomer or you're a veteran, is showing up and not having an agenda, being open, being holding space, being present. When you have that contact or that connection, being able to have dialogue with them, and again, come from a place of offering and building the relationship versus like need. And then as that relationship continues, reaching out and including the personal, And how else? What else would you kind of wrap up with? With that relationship as you go into maybe year 2, 3, 5, with them, and you're building.
I mean, same kind of stuff. The touch points, like the constantly finding time to interact. But I think like the photo booth world is the kind of perfect sort of metaphor. Is that like your best photo booths are the ones that have the best hardware and the most updated software. So your best booths are getting the most action. Well, if you're not really dialed in on your own personal hardware and software, if you're not putting the time in to improve your hardware and your software, then you are not getting the most action.
Yeah.
And You can point a lot of fingers, but if you really focus on dialing in your personal hardware and software, you will see that there is a radical shift in how networking happens. You'll actually drive further away from the station that actually creates all that doubt. That initial resistance, that like fear, actually becomes opportunity. Instead of going like, ooh, I don't know if I should go talk to that person, you're actually like, who am I talking to? There's this entire shift, right? You can use the word anxious or you can use the word excited. Both of those in the same interaction are going to either, cower you or they're going to induce action. And so just constant work, just like we are trying to continuously add new features and add upgrades and improve processing, the person has to do that too.
Yeah. I was watching this interview with Mike Tyson recently, and he was talking about being fearful and that he was afraid every fight that he's ever been in, and that he's always afraid, but he's made a friend with fear, and that he includes fear, and that fear is something that isn't necessarily bad. It's necessarily good, but it's there for you to use, and it can give you adrenaline. It's the same thing that shows up when, Neanderthals and the saber tooth, the fight or flight, gives you the energy to get away, but it also allows you to step into something or pay attention to something.
The thing that I think is made that shift muddy is adulthood. See, when you were a kid, you were naturally used to being scared of stuff. You were scared of the dark, you were scared of monsters, but that fear was constantly overcome. And you allowed yourself to grow in that sense because your body was also growing. And so as you got bigger, you started to fear less things like the dark, like the monsters. Now, the problem is now that the body is no longer growing, that physical representation isn't there, we now think fear means don't do it. Stop. And then we get stuck in these little lives that feel very, mediocre. And then we find this complaint. We find this constant complaint because we're not allowing ourselves to grow. Remember, the scared thing is the sacred thing. And every time you do something that you're a little bit fearful of, you expand. And then you try something else that's a little scary, and then you expand. Obviously, with calculated risk, right? You don't have to jump out of a plane to expand every time. You can literally sit down next to someone at a gate and engage a conversation.
Yeah, not just be on your phone. I kind of want to just wrap up with this thought that I just had, which is, a lot of times the people in the photo booth industry, they left another job because this was the passion. This was something that was so fun to just like throwing an event, taking photos, having a good time. And it was this joyous excitement. And there was fear involved with taking that leap of faith. And it's important to remember that it's fun, that the reason, what's your why? Why did you get into it? So when you hit these moments of like, oh, this is a long day, or I don't want to go to this thing, or what am I going to get out of this? And just be like, remembering why you do this and the fact that it's fun, and get back to that laser tag moment. As we both have these guns skill, that moment of, what shot you out of the cannon to do this crazy business,
Yeah, I mean, you don't always have to love it. It definitely makes it so much easier. But you have to show up the whole way, right? So that means physically, emotionally, and have breath. If all those three things are there, you can accomplish pretty much anything, even if it's not the most loving thing that you have to do. Because let's face it, a lot of parts of our job, you're just not going to love, right? You're not going to love all the parts of the job. There's a lot of mundane stuff. There's a lot of minutia that has to get accomplished. But if you have effective hardware and software, you can power through those moments so that you can enjoy the other stuff, the real fun stuff. Because you can't just have the cake all the time. There's got to be some work. There's got to be some effort put in. And that's what makes everything a little sweeter. And when you can find the work part and you can call it soreness instead of pain, right? Like when you leave the gym, you don't say you're in pain. I mean, it hurts, but you say soreness because that word has a completely different impact on your nervous system. So when you start talking differently about the things that you're doing, you'll notice that there's an instant difference in the nervous system and how you move about your life and different, problems, and they become not as daunting and just opportunities to, like grow a muscle.
Fernando, when you're transitioning from networking with social events versus corporate events, is there a difference? And how do you go about it?
Well, I'd say the networking isn't that much different, right? Interacting with people should always be the same, right? Always the same genuine interaction. But how you're going to meet and interact with these clients varies dramatically. And I think the corporate clientele wants to see the person as a brand all by themselves. They want to see that this person is a professional, trustworthy, responsive, and an expert. And one of the ways that you can facilitate this is by being a part of an organization in which lots of people already know you, already trust you, already have that groundwork built. When corporate clients come to networking events or come to trade shows or conferences, they are relying on a lot of other people's knowledge of you in order to make those decisions. People like feeling secure. That's why word of mouth is so valuable, because they have a connection to a person, which is why the personal brand is so important, right? People paid Michael Jordan and Beyonce and Messi and Ronaldo. They use people because the connection is never really with a company or a brand, but it's tied to another person. So you can't really connect to an inanimate object or product. You're connecting to another person. So it's really vital that you're spending the time to make that person as effective, as efficient, and as productive as possible.
And representative, right, of the brand as a whole.
Exactly.
And that goes back to what you're talking about earlier with being part of the team and having confidence in the team or confidence in the brand when you're reaching out. Do you find that, obviously you'll have a contact from maybe, the head of a department, but often you're dealing with whole teams of people on an email chain or something, and how do you navigate that with regards to this type of organic communication when there are, some gatekeepers maybe, or there is a whole team of people with different jobs and, with this corporate, there might be 5, 6, 7 people on an email.
Yeah, I mean, that's gonna happen. The thing that is gonna be most helpful, really simple, is response time. Corporate clients are relying on really quick decisions, and the longer they wait, there's opportunity for outsourcing or for calling someone else. And it also delays their process. I've found that people are working on tighter timelines, and getting information now is incredibly vital, that you get it to them as fast as possible. If you can turn around even one event really quickly, they'll never reach out to anyone else. I can't tell you how many times clients have called me and like, oh my God, Fernando, I need you like tomorrow. My regular photo booth guy is not answering. I don't know what happened. I don't know what's going on. And we'll be there. And when you can accomplish something that is time sensitive and you can do it professionally and efficiently, that kind of seals the deal for all future interaction.
Yeah, and that goes to the trust, the reliability, and it buys you time in the future, right? That consistency, because there's going to be a time where it's going to be tougher to turn around quickly, but they know that you're reliable, right? This has been great, Fernando. This has been another interview with In the Booth, and this is Fernando Coelho. Awesome. Thanks, brother.
My pleasure, man.